are here once again with yet another edition of Tuskegee Mares within Thou Pride of the Swift-Growing South, a 5-part series of those who served as mayors of the historic city of Tuskegee, Alabama. Hello, I'm your host, E. Jagady Colbert, and I am joined today with the tip of the spear, the first African-American mayor of the historic city of Tuskegee, which he often has said, the smallest, largest city in America. I'm here with the Honorable Johnny Ford. Mayor Ford, thank you so very much for taking time out of your very busy schedule to do this documentary for us.
Brother Jagady, thank you. You know, you have a long history of being a great musician with the band, but also your involvement in this community from a spiritual standpoint and just being an inspiration to so many of our young people as a homegrown hero.
Thank you so very much for that, and I accept that.
Yes.
As was stated earlier, tip of the spear, first African-American mayor. You are also credited with many firsts and onlys, and we will talk about a few of those later. But first, please let everyone who's watching and viewing today, and even on the www World Wide Web, let them know who you are and whose you are.
Well, I, first of all, was born when I served in the legislature. I represented 3 counties, Bullock, Macon, and Lee. So I was born in beautiful Bullock County.
Okay.
Reared from the age of 4 in magnificent Macon County, and educated in lovely Lee County at Auburn University. So my roots are from this Alabama, central Alabama area. My parents, Bertha and Willie Patterson, are my natural biological parents, as I said, born in beautiful Bullock County. But at the age of 4, my uncle Charlie Benjamin Ford, the Reverend Charlie Benjamin Ford, and his wife saw me and said, "I like that little bow-legged boy." And said to my mother, "Can I keep him for a little while?" And of course, that little while turned into a lifetime. Brought me to Tuskegee, changed my name. I was born Johnny Snipes. That was my mother's, biological mother's name. But then my uncle adopted me officially and changed my name to Johnny Ford. That's how I became a Ford. But the point is, I am proud to be born in beautiful Alabama, a son of the South.
So let
me just finish it. Born in beautiful Bullock County, reared in magnificent Tuskegee, and attended the Washington Public School, which is right across, named in honor of Dr. Booker T. Washington. But that's where I got my start at 6 years old at Washington Public School, and then on to Tuskegee Institute High School. As a matter of fact, we went to the high school in the 8th grade because...
That is correct.
you remember all...
So did I.
Yes, in the 8th grade. And so I would never forget the excitement of going for the first day. We didn't call it the high school, we called it high school. Going to Tuskegee Institute High School.
Yes, correct.
And sure enough, 5 years at Tuskegee Institute High School, which within itself is a great institution because the high school was founded also by Booker T. Washington on the campus of Tuskegee University. And so 4 years at Tuskegee Institute High School, and I was accepted to go to Tuskegee University. I played football, basketball, and baseball in high school. I should have stuck to baseball because that was my best sport. Mr. Knight, my record still stands, 4 shutouts and 1 year.
You were pitching?
Yeah, pitcher, 4 shutouts, and Rockefeller Braves, of course, the championship team. And basketball at Tuskegee Institute High School put me in the game, 22 points in the second half, so I never forget that.
Who was the coach of that team?
None other than Coach A. Ruben Alva. Coach Alva.
There it is.
You bird, sit down.
Well, I know that this is going to be a wonderful interview because some of the questions that I want to ask you, I was going to ask you your elementary school matriculating process, your high school matriculating process. Now you go on to your collegiate time.
Yeah, and then, as I said, I had been accepted to go to Tuskegee University, but I saw this great basketball player, Jackie Fitzpatrick, who came to Logan Hall and just shot out everything. So he became our hero around here. I had to be like Jack. I just had to get to Knoxville College because of that great basketball player. And that summer, I got a job at Knoxville College. Got us a job in Wildwood, New Jersey, and that was my first time away from home. And while I was there that summer, I just networked with some other guys who were going to Knoxville, and we became buddies.
Okay.
We became known as Wildwood Boys.
The Wildwood Boys.
And instead of coming to Tuskegee University, which I should have done because that's where baseball was really my best sport, and that's what I should have stuck with baseball. But I always wanted to play football. I got hurt playing football in high school, and my dad said, "No more football, no more football." So literally, I went away to college so that I could play football, and my daddy did not know I was playing football until we came home, Knoxville, to play Tuskegee University.
Oh, wow.
And here I was playing for Knoxville College, but probably pulling for Tuskegee University in my heart. That was just that.
Wow.
But seriously.
Bittersweet.
Yeah, I had 4 years at Knoxville College, and there we were involved in SNCC and the Civil Rights Movement.
But you got a BA in business administration there, didn't you?
Oh yeah, no. My degree was history.
Okay.
History and sociology is what.
Okay.
Because all of my life, first my 8th grade basketball coach said I'd make a good social worker, so I thought I was going to be a social worker. Then I thought I always wanted to be a corporate lawyer, so I was practicing, studying to become a lawyer. And then in my final year at Knoxville, senior, 3 of us, while many were dodging the war, I always wanted to be a Tuskegee Airman. Growing up here in Tuskegee, my daddy would sit on the porch and tell us about his war experience. We could hear the planes flying over. So I always wanted to fly to be a Tuskegee Airman. So I volunteered for the war in 1964. We borrowed a car. We didn't have ROTC at Knoxville College, so we borrowed a car, drove 200 miles to the Air Force Base, took the test, passed the physical, the intellect and everything, to become second lieutenants in the United States Air Force as a pilot. All set to go. Had done everything except the dental work. We had to do that separately in terms of just routine dental work. Paid to get that done by an outside white doctor who, because of racism, did not turn in my records. And here I was ready to go serve my country as a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force, had passed all of the requirements, and this doctor did not turn in my records because of race. And I say it was racial because when I found out by letter that they hadn't received my routine dental report, I took a bus from New York City all the way down to Wildwood, New Jersey, knocked on the door to try to get my records, and this guy called the police. I mean, it was just a serious situation. But to make a long story short, I was not able to actively serve in the United States Air Force because of racism. I know how the many Tuskegee Airmen, future Tuskegee Airmen who were washed out for racial reasons, didn't get a chance to serve their country. But I later got a chance to serve my country sworn in by the Attorney General of the United States of America as the first state supervisor of the United States Department of Justice, responsible for the state of Alabama in the Montgomery courthouse in 1971. So I did serve my country in the Civil Rights War, because we had the responsibility for the peaceful transformation of Alabama into integration.
Yes.
In the schools, in government, in public life, carrying out Title 10 of the Civil Rights Act. So that was my work with the U.S. Department of Justice. So didn't get a chance to do the military, but I did serve as a sworn officer for the United States Department of Justice.
We salute you in that respect.
Thank you.
Now, you have graduated from Knoxville College.
Yes.
And this is before Auburn University Montgomery.
Right.
You would leave, or you would travel across the river from Wildwood, New Jersey, into the state and or city of New York.
New York.
And you had a job or an occupation where you were with the New York Council of the Boy Scouts of America. Tell us a little bit about that.
You know, I was a Boy Scout here, and it was Dr. J.H.M. Henderson. I
That's
always
correct.
give him, remember Dr. Henderson?
Yes. Park is named after him.
I always give him credit for saving my life. Some of us, Carver Leonard, Lonnie Smith, a bunch of us had been swimming. Well, we had actually, we were at Camp Atkins, at Camp Boy Scout Camp Atkins.
I do know.
Cooked, ate too many pork and beans, and decided to go swimming in the lake, and I caught a cramp. Was going down for the third time.
Is that right?
And I said to myself, oh, so this is how I'm going to go, because I worked, you know, and I was just exhausted. And when I just as I had given up on life, really, because I felt a strong arm lift me up and bring me to the surface. That was Dr. J.H.M. Henderson, one of the great medical, scientific doctors who ran the George Washington Carver Foundation and was our Boy Scout leader for this area. Saved my life at Camp Atkins here in Tuskegee. But so Boy Scouting meant a lot. And when I was interviewed for this position as a Scout executive, it was Dr. Henderson who sent a letter of recommendation to the New York Council. So I got that job. And I got that job after Senator Kennedy's death, and that's a whole story within itself, in New York City.
Because that's where you met RFK, Robert Fitzgerald Kennedy, the brother of John Fitzgerald Kennedy,
right,
who was the president of the United States. So you had the opportunity, as fate would have it, to meet him during your Boy Scouts of America days.
As a matter of fact, it was during scouting, as a professional scouter, responsible for Bedford-Stuyvesant, part of Brooklyn.
I'm a New Yorker.
In New York,
Yes.
Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. I was in charge of all of that in scouting. And that's where I met Earl Graves, the founder of
the magazine.
Exactly.
Black Enterprise.
Earl Graves was my chief volunteer scouting. What we did as professional scouters was to mobilize volunteers and to train them in fundraising and organizing troops and leading troops, etc. Many people do not realize that the Boy Scouts of America and the Girl Scouts of America, they see the volunteer operation, but behind them are business leaders. We were executives who ran, who raised the money from the corporations and foundations in New York City to sponsor scouting. And of course, I met Earl Graves. He was my chief scout volunteer in Bedford-Stuyvesant. Earl became the administrative assistant to New York's Senator Robert Francis Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy.
Bobby.
And I told Earl, I said, if Kennedy runs for president, Earl, because he was familiar with me organizing, my organizing skills. Like Obama, I was a community organizer.
Okay.
I told him, I want to work with you. And sure enough, when Kennedy announced his candidacy to run for president of the United States, first thing Earl did was call me and say, "Hey Johnny, I want you to come on board and I want you to be my assistant." And we were given the responsibility, Earl Graves, for mobilizing the black vote for Kennedy in the presidential campaign of 1968.
As a strategist.
Yes, Earl was the top man and I was his assistant. And if Kennedy had lived, we would have gone straight to the White House with him. Earl Graves, and of course I would have gone with him as well. But our responsibility across the country, first, one day I came on board, the next day we were on a plane headed to the primary in Nebraska. And Earl took me out there, showed me the ropes, left me, and our first campaign, Kennedy won 8 out of 10 of the black votes, and we won the Nebraska campaign.
Yes.
And after that, I was in demand across the country. This guy Ford from Alabama as a community organizer. Then we went to New York, and then finally to California after the loss in Oregon. And we organized that campaign, and sure enough, Kennedy won the California primary, and we were there that night in Los Angeles when Kennedy said his final words.
Met his demise.
Yeah, he said, "On to Chicago,
Yes.
and let's win there." Those were his last words, and
Yes.
he went back through the kitchen, which we had not
Walking
planned.
through.
Yeah,
Yes.
we had not planned on to go that way, but Ethel was pregnant at the time, and he didn't want to go through the crowd, so it was
Yes.
a last-minute decision. And I've got pictures now of what happened that night, and it's just an unfortunate situation.
It is that, but may I say, and hope I'm not interrupting, when you felt that arm around you with Dr. Henderson
Yes.
lift you up, you had given up, but God Almighty hadn't given up on you.
That's right.
He knew
Yeah.
that you had so much to do. And so now here you are from Atkins Park, now in New York with RFK
Right.
as a strategist, and then you came back to Tuskegee and was a director of the Model Cities program. Tell us something about the Model Cities
Well,
program.
before that, after Kennedy's death, we knew after he was shot, Earl Graves said, "You all go back to New York," and we took the Kennedy plane back to New York. But on that long flight back across America, tears running down my eyes, I said, Dr. King had just been assassinated just 3 months earlier.
That's correct.
Now Kennedy was gone. And I remember something I said that at the age of 13, when we were locked out of City Park by the white mayor.
Segregation.
And we saw the name Mayor Frank Carr. And I said to Sonny and Carver and Lonnie and some of the other guys standing there, I said, "You know, the mayor of Tuskegee must be a powerful dude if he can keep us out of this park. One day I want to be mayor of Tuskegee, Alabama.
Say it again.
In
One day.
One day I want to become mayor of Tuskegee, Alabama." And the guy said, "Man, you crazy. You know, you forget about that." But I never lost sight of that. And they still remind me today. Carver Leonard, Lonnie Smith, those guys like that, they remind me that I said that way back when I was 13 years old. That's the same 13, 14 years old. That's the same age that Emmett Till was
That is correct.
when he was killed. But then I never lost sight of that deep down inside, that impression. And so after Kennedy's death, we flew back to New York, and I got involved again with the New York Council, and of course with Earl Graves. And riding down the street in the back of a limousine, Earl Graves pointed to the skyscrapers of New York. He said, "By the time I'm 40, I'm going to be a millionaire. That's where I'm going, to the skyscrapers of New York." He said, "Johnny, I want you to go with me as my assistant. I'm going to start Black Enterprise magazine."
Wow.
And I said, "No, Earl, can't do it, because my destiny calls for me to go back to Alabama, back to my roots, and in the words of Booker T. Washington, to cast down my buckets." in Tuskegee. And so here again, Dr. Henderson wrote a recommendation. I applied for the job of Model Cities Executive Coordinator in the in the winter of 1968. Came home at my own expense for the interview. And sure enough, I was selected as the first executive coordinator of the Tuskegee Model Cities program and reported to work on February 15, 1969.
You know, a lot of people have been hearing, people in your age group and people in mine and people younger than myself, some of them have heard of Model Cities. What was Model City so they can have that information?
Well, the whole idea was the U.S. Department of HUD selected 150 cities in America, gave those cities grants to be innovative in identifying the problems in their city or in the model city area.
Housing and urban development.
Yes. HUD, Housing and Urban Development. And with that grant, they were able to come up with a comprehensive program using innovative approaches, letting the people say to the government, this is what I want done in my neighborhood, rather than the government telling the people. Model Cities was designed to have the people do an assessment of their communities and tell the government, this is our priority for housing, for water, for sewer, for streets, for recreation, for health care, social services. And that's what we did. We divided Tuskegee into 10 neighborhoods, starting with the Central District in downtown, for the Lake community, the Rockefeller community, the Tuskegee University community, Hillcrest, Green Fork, those 10 neighborhoods, and Greenwood and Green Fork. They all came together, and it was my responsibility to coordinate that, to come up with this comprehensive plan. And we did that, and we got a grant for $1,766,000 as our planning grant. And we used portions of that grant to match other federal dollars, you know, at either 10% or 20%. And so we got a total of the 1.7 plus an additional $10 million of other projects to do things like run water, because when we came back, people still had outdoor toilets, people lived on dirt streets. People did not have public lighting. We only had public lighting in downtown Tuskegee in the white sections. And in the black sections, we had to pay for public lighting. In some instances, neighborhoods had to pay to have their streets paved. And so Model Cities gave us money so that we could pave streets, we could run water lines, we could run sewer lines, we could put in public lightings. We could work on recreational facilities at Albert Park, Henderson's Park. We could work on building the water plant, the sewer plant, all of those things, water towers, all those things we did with that first Model Cities program. And so as the first executive coordinator, I had the responsibility to lay the foundation for what is being done in Tuskegee today in many areas, because we got those original grants to develop the infrastructure of Tuskegee. And when I became mayor, essentially, I ran on a platform to implement what the people had planned as Model Cities director.
So it can be a continuing thing.
Exactly.
So now, most people don't know this. And this is an informative interview. Maybe during or after the Model Cities venture that you had, most don't know that you managed to campaign for the attorney for the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, Fred Gray, for the State House of Alabama. Tell us something about that campaign. So you was a strategist, organizer.
Yeah, well, that was the whole idea. When I came back from the Kennedy campaign, of course, I knew about politics because I had been trained by the best. with Earl Graves and other national leaders as a political strategist. So when I came back, I got involved in helping the other local folk get elected. I used my Kennedy campaign skills to help organize Kennedy-type campaigns where we would go door to door, phone canvassing, setting up headquarters, open campaign, with Kennedy campaign. So I helped Lucius Amerson get reelected as sheriff. He was elected first in 1966. And then in 1970, Fred Gray ran for the Alabama legislature. I was in New York at that time. As a matter of fact, I had left Model Cities. And Earl Graves had invited me. He said, finally, Johnny, I want to get you back to New York to work with him. Mm-hmm. And I was actually in New York and thought I was in love, too, with a young lady in New York, too. But at any rate, I was back in New York, and Fred called Fred. I said, Fred, you need a campaign manager? And sure enough, he said, yes, come on back, and you can run my campaign. And I came back, and I managed Fred Gray's campaign as his professional campaign, and I also helped Thomas Reed, because at that time there were two legislative
That's
positions.
correct. And I want to say this because I don't want it to be unsaid.
That's okay.
The Honorable Fred D. Gray.
Yes.
Have to put that honorable
Yes.
in it amongst all of the other things that he has done for this community and the world.
Yeah, the Honorable Dr. Fred David Gray.
Thank
because
you,
he has
sir.
so many doctorate degrees from all over the nation.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Okay, so now your hat is being tossed within the ring for the office of mayor of Tuskegee, Alabama. And success arrived in 1972 with you becoming the first black or African American mayor in Tuskegee. I would like to say this, and I know you're going to
It's
smile,
okay.
but listen to this for me, please. The first mayor of Tuskegee founded in 1833, Macon
Right.
County 1832. The first mayor of Tuskegee was J.R. Wood. He was a
Right.
Caucasian. And the last... Woodard, okay.
Yeah,
And the
Wood.
last Caucasian mayor, I don't know his first name, was Keever.
C.M. Keever.
So I'm going to ask you this.
Yes.
Is rumored or is it in fact? When the Honorable Johnny Ford, yourself,
Yes.
was successful in your venture to become the mayor of Tuskegee, the first African American, they say that, or it was said that when he knew he did not win the election, he did not let the sun shine on him in Tuskegee under the black mayor's auspices. Is that true? Did you hear that?
Well, we all heard it, but the point is, as soon as he was not successful, I remember the mayor said, "Oh, I've saved up a lot of money, and and so I'm going to move me and my wife up to Oxford, Alabama." That's where he moved, C.M. Keever. But Keever was a good man, you know.
Was it a nasty race or was it a good race? What kind of person was he? I heard you say he was a good guy.
It was a good race. It was a challenging race, quite frankly. We ran the race rather than concentrate on him, you know, because I learned how to campaign. And of course, we ran on the platform, the Model Cities Capture. We had spent 2 years planning and developing a comprehensive plan, and now I needed to be mayor in order to implement the plan. So that's really what it was all about. But what I had to do, though, to win that election, because Keeper had as many black supporters as I did, and particularly since I was, as you know, I was interracially married at that time. I fell in love with a young lady who happened to be white, who was from Union Springs, Alabama, Frances Ford, Task Ford. But that became an issue in the campaign because I was interracially married. So here I was running against a white candidate, interracially married in the Deep South, where Task and I decided we don't care what racists say. We love each other, we're going to get married. We're from the South. The law said you couldn't get married, but we're going to get married anyway. We don't care what they said. We're going to cast down our buckets where we sit. say where we are. And actually our marriage changed the law in Alabama because it was against the law at that time.
It was against the law, and that's what I was about to say.
But the probate judge was Preston Hornsby,
Oh my God.
who was running for a re-election, and he dared not deny us marriage in the courthouse because he was running for a re-election. So he married us anyway.
Yes.
But it was against the law. So after that, they changed the law. But the point is, that was one of the issues in the campaign. And so what I had to do was emphasize the fact that if you're going to vote for me because I'm interracially married or because I'm black, if you're going to use those kinds of
Tactics.
against me, then so be it. You vote for the other man. But if you want to vote for someone who's young, not afraid, who has a plan of action to move our city forward based upon a carefully planned a strategy to move our city forward, then I'm your man. Someone who knows how to get the job done, someone who has contacts with Washington, someone who will work with everyone, black or white, because that was my campaign, that I wanted to work with all the people, work for and with all of the people of Tuskegee, Alabama. And so we ran that kind of positive campaign. And one of the things that happened is many of the African American women in the city forgot about the racial issue and said, we're going to support Johnny. As a matter of fact, Mrs. Grimmett, a black woman, put a full-page ad in the newspaper, said, come home, Johnny. Tuskegee needs you. And sure enough, when I saw that full-page ad, I ran another page, and the following week it says, Tuskegee, I need you too, and I'm coming home. I resigned from my $15,000 job as state supervisor of the United States Department of Justice and left Montgomery and came home. And on April 15, 1972, I announced my candidacy to run for mayor of Tuskegee, Alabama. And we took the campaign to the people, a Kennedy-type campaign, open door, open campaign, open card, taking it to the people. And sure enough, on election night, after the runoff, well, before we got elected, we ended up in the runoff. And when we had the runoff, they had purposely placed all the voter registration days during the summertime when the students at Tuskegee University were away. But thank goodness for us, the band came back early. And the football team came back early.
Crimson Pipers and Golden Tigers.
So we round up all of the students at Tuskegee University, the football team, members of the band, cheerleaders, borrowed Mr. Snow's bus, brought them downtown to the Macon County Courthouse, and when those conservative white board of registrars members saw all those big football players and students, actually scared them to death. So they locked the courthouse and would not allow anybody to register to vote. That was against the Voting Rights Act.
That's correct.
Which said that if you're there on time and you're eligible, they must register you to vote. So we filed a federal lawsuit, and we got Attorney Fred Gray, Dr. Fred Gray again, his honor, to file the lawsuit, and we got Attorney Chestnut, the Honorable Chestnut in Selma, because Attorney Gray couldn't come out publicly because he was the city attorney for the city of Tuskegee. So we got Chestnut to handle the lawsuit. And we filed the lawsuit, and listen to this. We came before Judge Robert Bonner, who owns the big mansion at the end of Farnville Street, that big mansion.
Yes,
you know, you got gray columns, but you also have a big white one.
That's correct.
Well, that's where my mother worked, my stepmother, Tennessee Ford. She worked for the Bonner family. And I was a yard boy. I'm the one who cut the yard and they worked for it. And what's so interesting, that's the judge that our case ended up in front of. Judge Robert Bonner at the federal courthouse in Montgomery, Alabama.
Wow.
We went there on Friday, presented our case. The judge ruled in our favor from the bench,
Wow.
ordered the board of registrars to open up that Monday and register those approximately 150 students from Tuskegee University. That next day, during the election, we got our buses, took the students and all the other folk to the election, and we only won that election by 100, and out of 4,000 votes, we won by 127 votes. The students, the football team made the difference in the band, so that's why I always spoke to the football team, fired up.
That's
fired up.
That's right.
They would always bring me down to speak to the football team and the band and all of that during those early years.
So I remember this. When Barack Hussein Obama
Yes.
won the election, I was upon the campus of Tuskegee University, and that night when
That
they
night.
announced the winner of the
Kansas.
presidential election, the entire campus, I could hear people screaming all over the campus. So I want to ask you this. What was the mood of the city when they found out that Johnny L. Ford won the election?
Let me tell you, but first of all, after the polls closed, I had a campaign manager, Jim Jernick. He was a white guy I'd worked with in New Orleans as a consultant. Jim was a rich white boy who walked off his job in New Orleans. He didn't need a job. Came to Tuskegee to manage my campaign. Boy, he was sharp with statistics and
You had someone managing your campaign, your strategist?
Exactly.
Okay.
But he actually did the work. You know, I was a candidate,
Yes.
so I listened to him, and I had a lot of other guys to come up from New Orleans, like Sherman Copeland, who ran Moon Landrieu's campaign in New Orleans. He was in charge of the political organization down there, and they brought people and money from New Orleans to help me campaign. But to make a long story short, I said, Jim, when the polls close, don't call me with no partial results. I want you to call me at the house when you know the election is over. So we were there at I'm not sure, 102 Parker Avenue. That's where I lived at the time.
That's correct.
Myself, my wife, Taz, and my son, John. He was 1 year old at the time. We were there waiting. And the phone rang. And I said, she looked at me and I looked at her and said, pick up the phone. Now you pick it up. Seriously, she picked up the phone and she said, it's Jim. He said, let me speak to the mayor.
Oh my God.
So that's why the name of my book is Let Me Speak to the Mayor.
Wow.
This was the first time a white man had called a black man mayor in the city of Tuskegee, Alabama. And when the news broke, boy, all over town, the folks were everywhere, all over town on an inaugural night. Where North Main is, the city hall then was in front of the courthouse, right next to the courthouse. When we had the inauguration, when I stepped out there that night, there was a sea of people everywhere. And we didn't have lighting, we had flambeaus.
Okay.
And everybody was there. Reverend S.T. Martin, my pastor was there, Thomas Reed was there, the state legislator, Attorney Fred Gray, everybody was there, and people from everywhere. Dr. E.D. Nixon from Montgomery, Alabama. Not only were they from across Tuskegee,
Yes.
but you know, Tuskegee, Alabama, and Tuskegee University, which is located here, was like a beacon of hope for black people everywhere in Alabama. You know, John Andrew Hospital was where most of the black babies in this area, they were born.
That is.
And Booker T. Washington had this whole principle of bringing in people and reaching out, outreach. So when I became mayor of Tuskegee, that was a symbol. That was like a liberation for black people in Alabama. Though Alabama had other black mayors like Hobson City and others, and Pritchard, but when Tuskegee, Alabama elected an African American mayor, and I remember in my inauguration speech I said, to black people of Tuskegee, Alabama, and to the South and to the nation. We are free. As John Henry said, who was a steel driving man.
That's correct. On the railroad.
That's right. John Henry. And then there was another black man who, when John Henry died, he said, "This is the hammer that killed John Henry. But this hammer ain't gonna kill me. We are free. Free at last, free at last." I used Dr. King's speech that night, and I said to the people, go back to Rockefeller Hill, go back to Low Lake Community, go back to Zion Hill, go back to Greenwood, go back to Green Fork, go back to Tuskegee University and the campus, come back to the Central District, knowing that if we work together and struggle together and unite together, we will move Tuskegee forward. So today we are free, free at last in Tuskegee, Alabama. It was like a liberation.
Well,
it really was. And not just about me individually, because the election was bigger than me.
Bigger than yourself.
It was a liberation for the people, because for the first real time black people had a chance to use their votes in Tuskegee, because Tuskegee Institute with Dr. C.G. Gomillion and others there, Dr. Tolan and...
Oh my goodness. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem Tolan and C.G. Gomillion and Dr. Stanley Smith and others at the university, the Tuskegee Civic Association. They had led the voting rights movement here in Tuskegee. Montgomery had Montgomery had the bus boycott, but we had the economic boycott here in Tuskegee.
That's correct.
Dr. King was the leader, along with Fred Gray and E.D. Nixon in Montgomery. But here in Tuskegee at the same time, we had C.G. Gomillion, W.P. Mitchell, Attorney Fred Gray came over. We had all those people, the Sullins.
Was the Honorable Thomas Reed in
Thomas Reed, everybody was involved. They were involved in this in our movement here at the same time. And ours was about voting rights and economic rights. So once the blacks had the majority of votes, they could have done like they did in many of the historic black towns. They could have incorporated Tuskegee Institute into a town. But instead, it was the thinking of the blacks, let's don't separate Tuskegee Institute, let's take over the whole town so that we'll have one community. And that was the whole thrust of Model Cities, to bring together Tuskegee Institute, which operated as a separate body. It had its own water system, electrical plant, and all of that. We had the VA hospital that had its own operation, and of course the town of Tuskegee. My goal as the first African American mayor was to bring the three together, the VA, the university, and the town into one community.
And you know, there also was a Macon County hospital. So Tuskegee had 3 hospitals.
Oh yeah, we
right
had
across the hill.
Macon County Hospital, John Andrew Hospital, founded in 1913 by Booker T. Washington, and of course the VA Hospital, founded in 1923.
So you know, I see, and most of you do see as well, and you hear the confidence of not just spouting off.
Yeah.
You are saying things and reciting things, and not reciting, you are informing people of what has happened, because see,
we lived it.
We lived it, but when you have people who have come before you and who have come with you, people like Booker T. Washington before you, Dr. George Washington Carver, the airmen,
Tuskegee,
Lucius Amerson, the first black sheriff since Reconstruction,
Calder rolled up.
Alice Coachman Davis, the first black woman to win an Olympic gold medal in the world.
Teacher.
In the world. Attorney Fred Gray. And that's just to name a few.
Yes.
Add the name of Johnny L. Ford to that. Because the lake is named after you in certain respects. And I want to say that with all of those things behind you, and you knowing it within your heart and within your mind, you did the national, or excuse me, the World Conference of Mayors. Did that confidence give you the audacity and the strength and courage and knowledge to go out and talk to mayors all over the world in the international community?
Yeah, let me just give you a good example. I was once in...
Where the Honorable Johnny Ford is expected to be greeted by the mayor of the Chatham-Kent area. We will in fact have discussions and presentations about the agricultural operations by the Prince family on about 700 acres of land that they have, and the whole economics of that area for African Canadians. We will then travel back to the Milton Hotel. We are in the works of preparing historical explanation of all of the historic black towns and settlements through Ontario. We are in the midst of planning to stop, possibly, if time permits, in the city of London, which is about halfway between Toronto and Windsor, where there is an underground railroad aspect there. When we get back to the hotel, you're going to have enough time to basically, get yourself together, and we're going to have a buffet-style after party. And then Friday morning on the 27th, Honorable Ford and the World Conference of Mayors, Historic Black Towns and Settlements, and National Policy Alliance will have a boardroom meeting with breakfast in the morning. We then intend after that to follow that up with about a 3-hour workshop where we can all come together and talk about true business and partnerships with everyone who's attending.
Yes, sir. Dr. Amon, you ready with Haiti?
Yes, I am here for Haiti. Greetings.
Long live Haiti!
Long live Haiti. Long live Haiti. If there is a time that we need to leave behind Haiti, it is now. Because we have some crisis, more crisis developing at the border. And we heard that back on September 15th, the president of the Dominican Republic closed all the borders between Haiti and the Dominican Republic.
Right.
They closed all the borders, no commerce, no traveling between them, and no flights between DR and Haiti, no commerce, no boats going through. They did that because there is a river, there is a large river that runs between Haiti and the DR.
Right.
And the Dominican Republic, they took 11 canals, 11 branches from that river.
Yeah.
But Haiti never took one. Now that Haiti has shortage of food and they need more water for their irrigation, and they decided to take one branch from that river to irrigate a plant there. And the DR said, no, they should not touch the water. And they asked Haiti to stop that work. If they don't stop the work, they will close the border. And the water is for the two nations. It's for the two nations. By international law, Haiti is entitled to use the water equally. If they took 11 branches, Haiti is entitled to 11 branches as well. But they don't.
The World Conference of Mayors. Did that confidence give you the audacity and the strength and courage and knowledge to go out and talk to mayors all over the world in the international community?
Yeah, let me just give you a good example. I was once in Detroit, I think we were attending the Delta's National Convention in Detroit, Cobalt Hall, and they lifted us all up. He said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to introduce to you now the black mayors of 5 of the largest cities in America. Tom Bradley, the mayor of Los Angeles, California. Coleman Young, the mayor of our city, Detroit. David Dinkins, the mayor of New York. Wilson Gould, the mayor of Philadelphia.
Yes.
And Johnny Ford, the mayor of Tuskegee. Here we were, the smallest town, but the name Tuskegee was so great. That's what I mean. I was not, Dick Gregory said it you know how Dick Gregory was. He
Yes.
said, man, you didn't get elected mayor of some little old raggedy town. You got elected mayor of Tuskegee. That sends a powerful statement to the nation. Because Tuskegee is something, man.
It is something.
The home of Tuskegee University, land of Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver, the home birthplace of Mrs. Rosa Parks, the home of Lionel Richie and the Commodores. I get you, the Tuskegee Airmen. So I mean, so Dick Gregory, he said, man, that name. And so that's the way I carried myself. We were small inside. We were the biggest little city in the world.
And that's what I alluded to earlier. And you know, to add unto those things that you just spouted off,
Yeah.
Tuskegee, Macon County, is one of very few in America that has Native American history,
Yes.
Confederate history, and African American history.
Yes.
So you have the whole ball of wax with you.
Exactly. And we recognize all of them. That we are the home of Osceola,
That's right.
great Native American
Seminoles.
and indigenous leader, Osceola. And then, of course, the old antebellum South was headquartered here with Tuskegee, the great columns where
Yes.
Gone with the Wind was
The
filmed.
Chattanooga, yes.
And Tuskegee, where I think the first law school started here, and what is now in Montgomery, what's the school in Montgomery?
Huntington.
Huntington College started right here in
And
Tuskegee.
several others also.
Yeah, medical school and all of that stuff. So Tuskegee is famous for its the white history of our white citizens, the history of our Native American citizens, and of course our African American history. Booker T. Washington did so much. Dr. George Washington Carver, so much. And not only that, Booker T. Washington was international. Founded the National Business League in
That's
1900.
That's right.
1900, sent our first emissary to Togo to teach the people there to plant cotton. And out of the Business League grew the National Bar Association. National Funeral Home Directors Association, National Credit, National Bankers Association,
Yes,
all of that grew out of that. And we're revitalizing all of that. So when I spoke as mayor of Tuskegee, Alabama, I was representing a great community, a historic community, a small town in physical status, but giant in importance to the nation and the world. So I was the mayor from the smallest town, but at one time I was leading mayors from 6 of the largest, out of the 10 largest cities in America. 6 of those mayors were members of our organization, the National Conference of Black Mayors.
When you spoke of, and we're going to speak on the World Conference of Mayors, but I have to ask you this before we leave that.
Right.
With all of that history that you just said, why do you think, and I know that they call it his story,
Yeah.
why do you think, I'm not calling any names,
That's okay.
but there's a presidential candidate that wants to, he's saying critical race theory,
Yeah.
because they know
Yeah.
that the history is American and it is black.
Yes, and we have to build America what it is today. The slaves who came were brought to this country against their own will, but once they were here, they were forced to work to help build this country to what it is today. And our history is American history.
It's American history.
And that's why they don't want it taught, because America would not be the
What it is
America
today.
that we know were it not for the blood, sweat, and tears shed in yesteryears by our African American forefathers.
So I'd like to ask you this.
Yes.
I was privileged, and I want to thank you publicly. I'd like to thank the Honorable Mayor John Ford. We started, and we're going to continue on with the World Conference of Mayors. I was privy to do the logo for you, for the World Conference of Mayors. Tell us how many countries are involved in the World Conference of Mayors.
When we, and first of all, I want to publicly thank you, your genius, the Honorable Tuskegee, pulled together what represents a world conference, not Southern Conference or National Conference, put a World Conference. And when we first started, all of this idea started in 1977 when Tuskegee and Banjul the Gambia, Alex Haley became my friend. He came to Tuskegee to give a lecture. He and I were on the same plane, so we became good friends. And Alex, I told him about our plans to enter into the Sister City program. He said, I know the place, Banjul the Gambia, the capital of the Gambia. Jufaray is the village where I trace my heritage to in roots. That would be, and so sure enough, Tuskegee, Alabama and Banjul the Gambia in a ceremony in New York City became the first two cities, an African city and a predominantly African American city, to enter into a sister city relationship. We received a grant from Sister Cities International for me to take a delegation to the Gambia, to take a look at their problem areas, and to come back and to write it up and to get funding to help them do something. And so I took, with the help of Dr. T.J. Pinnock at Tuskegee University, Dr. B.D. Mayberry, the Dean of the School of Agriculture, Major Holland, the School of Architecture, Dr. Short, who was at the School of Business. But at any rate, we went over, assessed it, and determined that the Central Marketplace was where they needed help most. They did not have running water, they did not have refrigeration, so they bring in all the foods and vegetables and meat, and they would spoil it so we wrote it up, brought it back, submitted it to the to USAID, the World Bank and others, and got the funding. And so I said to the mayor, Mayor George Munday, the mayor of Banjul, we were walking along the shores of the west coast of Africa in Banjul one morning after breakfast. And I said to the mayor, you know, it makes sense. You see, by us working together, we're able to not just talk, but to actually do something. We've gotten money to help you rebuild your market. That's something tangible. That's something that helps the people. Because the market is the center of their economy. We know the importance of the market. So the mayor said, so I said, you know, Mr. Mayor, it may make sense for us to organize an international conference of mayors with African mayors and African American mayors. And he said in his British tone, yes, Johnny, it makes sense. And I said, let's do it. But instead of us just, since we are not in the minority in the world as peoples of color.
That is correct.
Instead of us just have African mayors and African American mayors, let's don't go to them. Let's invite them to come to us, since we represent as people of color the majority in the world. And so we invited mayors from around the world to join us. And we invited those ambassadors to the organizational meeting that was held in St. Louis in April of 1984. And then finally, when I convened in 1984 in December,
that's correct,
I had been elected as the provisional president of the World Conference of Mayors. And I recommended Mayor Marion Barry to step up in my place. I stepped over, and Marion Barry, who he and I had been in SNCC together in the civil rights movement. Yeah, I was at Knoxville College. He was at the University of Tennessee, integrating that school. But Marion Barry became our president of the national conference. And so the two of us went to Africa. Yours truly as president of the World Conference of Mayors, and Marion Barry as president of the National Conference of Black Mayors.
Wow.
As mayor of the capital city of the United States. Went over to meet with the mayor, Mayor Mamadou Diop, who was mayor of Dakar, Senegal, the capital of Senegal. And they entered into a sister city program. And after we left that, we then flew on to Monrovia, Liberia, for the organizational meeting of the World Conference of Mayors. And at that meeting we had representative mayors from 40 nations.
40 nations.
From around the country who came, from around the world who came to that meeting. We had them from Jamaica, we had representatives from Taiwan. The mayor of Taipei, Taiwan was standing with me. I have a long-term relationship now with Taiwan today because they stood with me when I organized the World Conference of Mayors. As you know, we're building a $130 million company from Korea. I have a 40 year relationship with South Korea because I supported Reverend Moon when he was being persecuted. I became the first black leader in the U.S. to stand up for his religious freedom.
Yes.
And then Reverend Joseph Lowry, the head of SCLC,
yes,
he and I joined together in support of them. But that long-term relationship,
still
the
exists.
South Koreans never forgot that. That helped me to land that first South Korean plant in Shorter, the Halla plant. I brought them here first, but they wanted to be there. And then, of course, we now have another South Korean plant now that's being built in our industrial park now. So that's what the World Conference of Mayors was all about, to establish these global contacts so that we could not only talk with these mayors, but invite these countries to invest in our cities, in our towns. And we have importing and exporting, the World Conference of Mayors. And so, yes, I did have the confidence to organize first the Alabama Conference of Black Mayors, when I invited the 8 black mayors of Alabama. My friend Paul Cunningham called me from the NBC Today show and said, "Johnny, can you get together those 8 black mayors in Alabama? I want to put you all on the NBC Today show." I said, "No problem." Called them up, "Hey, how would you brothers like to be on the Today show?" They said, "When? Well, man, let's do it." So we all came together in WSFA in Montgomery, and for the first time, America saw 8 black mayors speak about their common problems as one united force. And I said to the mayors, since I invited you all together, since I'm paying for your lunch, now that we're together, why don't we stay together? Especially it makes sense for us to speak as a united voice of 8 mayors rather than one of us trying to deal with George Wallace, who was governor at that time. That was before the governor was shot and before he made his change in attitude and change and really ended up actually being a good governor. He actually turned his life around and became fair to the people of Alabama and did a good job. But before then, he was the old Wallace, and we had to deal with it. So that was the origin of the first Alabama Conference of Black Mayors that was organized in late November of 1972. And if you don't believe it, go to Jet Magazine, they covered it.
Yes.
And then in December of 1973, when we decided that we would organize the Southern Conference of Black Mayors, Mayor Charles Evers, the brother of Medgar Evers, they wanted to join with us. And said, "Well, where are we going to meet?" Because we went to Fed, you only had one little hotel, and everybody slept in everybody's house. So I said, "I invite you to Tuskegee, because we have the only black-owned Holiday Inn in America." And sure enough, they came from across the South, and even from the North. Mayor Dick Hatcher came down from Gary.
Wow.
Mayor Bob Blackwell came from Highland Park, Michigan. Ed Bivens came from Inkster, Michigan. They came down. They all. Dr. A.G. Gaston.
Oh my goodness.
Underwrote it. You know, he's a black millionaire from Birmingham.
Birmingham.
So at any rate, we got Earl Graves involved in this. I got Bob Brown from the White House because he was with the Nixon administration at that time, and he's the first man. They talk about Nixon, how bad Nixon was, but Nixon really had it together in terms of black folk because he had key black people in key positions. Nixon got involved in the Watergate thing. That was bad. But before that happened, he had black guys. He had Bob Brown in the White House, who brought all of us to Washington. Brought not only me, but Jesse Jackson, Roy Wilkins, Maynard Jackson. The first time we all went to the White House, Bob Brown brought us in there. That was in 1972. And then Art Fletcher and Labor. So we had to go. That's how I got all this money. Well, we're building, we're building the $130 million Korean plant.
Yes.
In the industrial park.
Yes.
You know what? I got that park from the Nixon administration because I was working. Because remember, I started my career with the Nixon administration, so I had the contacts. And when I became mayor, I was able to use those contacts to get money to build the industrial park. So I'm proud that 40, 50 years later, in an industrial park that we built at no cost to the city of Tuskegee, we're now building a $130 million Korean plant. So it just shows how vision pays off and how those contacts pay off. But to make a long story short, from that meeting in Tuskegee in December of 1973, Jet Magazine covered it, the national press covered it, because it was at that meeting that we invited George Wallace to come and welcome black mayors to Alabama. That was history making all over the world because that never had happened before. But he did, and that was the beginning of the Southern Conference of Black Mayors that grew into the National Conference of Black Mayors with Marion and Coleman Young and Tom Bradley and all the others in the big cities up north, saw that we were getting so much money down here in the South because we were sticking together and speaking as one. They said, hey, they petitioned, the big city mayors petitioned us small town mayors and said, we want to join with you all and make this a national conference of black mayors. Remember, here I am, Mayor of little old Tuskegee again, but they wanted to join with us. And so we expanded in 78. I think we had Muhammad Ali to come and be our keynote speaker. Had the Gambia hosted us, and we expanded in 1980 into the National Conference of Black Mayors. Elected Jay Cooper first president, Dick Hatcher second president. Then by that time I was ready to be president again. As I was a founder, then I was ready to be president. Once I got my town, I had to take care of getting my town ready first before I was ready to go off and be president. But I became, in 1982, president of the National Conference of Black Mayors in Birmingham, Alabama. We elected Mayor Dick Arrington, son of sharecroppers, as mayor of Birmingham, Alabama.
Well, Mayor Port, we can talk about the World Conference of Mayors all day.
Yes.
And I know they got it. And you got all of that, didn't you? And now you are armed with knowledge. Very quickly, we're coming to a close of our interview. Very, not snippet, but just something, tell us something about your tourism vision in Tuskegee.
Well, per capita, Tuskegee has more history than any town our size in America. We are the birthplace of Mrs. Rosa Parks. We're the land of Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, home of the flying, fighting Tuskegee Airmen, Lionel Richie, a Navy son. We got started, I was getting started about the same time as the Commodores. And
67 or something.
And no, 1969, that first hit was Machine Gun. Remember?
That's right.
That instrumental.
Right.
And then they had the album Commodore.
That's right.
Lion and all of them brought us to California. It's around here. But what I would used to do, the Commodores, we brought them into City Hall and endorsed them. And then I would travel with the Commodores to cities that had, particularly that they had mayors. I would get the mayor of that city to declare Commodore Day and give them the key to the city, that kind of thing. I'll never forget, the first time we traveled was to New Orleans, to the Superdome, and they filled it up.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, tourism. Booker T. Washington, Tuskegee Airmen, National Historic Site, Tuskegee Institute. We're one of the few cities that have two National Historic Site.
And landmark.
Yes, and Tuskegee Institute National Historic Site and the Tuskegee Airmen National Historic Site. Now we're working on getting the VA hospital declared as a National Historic Site, because the VA, in terms of history and significance, is to blacks in medicine what the Tuskegee Airmen were blacks in aviation. It's just that significant. You know the history.
Yes.
So in turn, that's why tourism is a gold mine for it, and that's why I promote tourism. That's why we have the History Center here today. The Honorable Fred Gray is leading that effort. And Miss Diane Robinson, the Honorable Diane Robinson, head of our Historic Commission. So we're promoting history. That's why we're pushing for a national holiday in honor of Mrs. Rosa Parks, who was born here in Tuskegee, Alabama. I remember spending time with her, trying to find her birthplace, and I think we got it. So the point is, tourism is our gold mine. That's what we're famous for. That's what we're noted for. We now have got to promote it and take advantage of it.
Okay, so now here we are. We're very close.
Okay.
It's called the rapid round.
Yes.
I ask you 2 or 3 questions, and you can answer them like that, and then we'll move on to our closing. Name a hobby you have.
Basketball, and I still jog, mostly walk now, but basketball is my favorite sport. As I said, baseball was my actual best sport. My record still stands in Tuskegee, 4 shutouts. Coach Knight, that goes down in history. And but my hobby, I guess, is, I don't know, water skiing and that kind of thing. I like to do that. And we want to revitalize Lake Tuskegee. We met this morning with the architecture department at Auburn University, and Tuskegee University is doing the same thing, helping us redevelop and design things that benefit the community. But Lake Tuskegee has tremendous potential.
Oh, that's good.
And I reminded him that we have a national water ski tournament there. But all over, history that we have, promoting our history and our culture. My favorite hobby, I guess, is water skiing and swimming and that kind of thing.
Okay.
And,
so let me ask you these last 2 rapid.
Okay.
What's your star sign, astrologically?
I'm Leo.
You're a Leo.
Yes, I'm on the edge, so I have a choice. Leo, I'm a lion.
All right.
The Lion of Tuskegee. They call Congressman Rangel the Lion of Lennox.
Yes, right.
Lion of Lennox. He started so I'm the Lion of Tuskegee.
So if you could sit down with anyone in history who have ever lived and probably had a conversation and or a meal with him, who would it be?
Well, of course, Booker T. Washington. I followed his philosophy perhaps more than anything. A graduate of Tuskegee Institute High School. You know, we were baby tigers and they were the golden tigers, but Booker T. Washington would have been great. Of course, Jesus was obviously my first preference if I had a chance. But Dr. King, from a distance, you know, he was here from between Montgomery and Tuskegee. But I have many Chappie James, my favorite Tuskegee Airman. I could go on and on. Earl Grays, my Black Enterprise leader, and Fred Gray, my great attorney. Friend E.D. Nixon. Rosa Parks was the mother of the movement, but it was Dr. E.D. Nixon who was the father of the movement.
Grassroots.
That's right. He's the one that had the courage to get Mrs. Parks out of jail and all those kinds. So I could go on and on. So
I thank you for that rapid round, and it was most interesting what you had to say. So now here we are. We're closing. We're closing, sir. And I would like for you to incorporate this question into this. Incorporate this last question into your closing remarks that you will say to the people out there who are viewing on the World Wide Web. Tell them what you want Tuskegee to remember you for.
Yes.
In your closing remarks.
Well, the most important thing is, I'm 81 now, okay? So what we've tried to do is build a town and a foundation to continue in the future. And I'm also proud of the fact that I have a family. My son, Chris, is a lawyer. John's in education. My daughter, Tiffany, I just attended her graduation on yesterday. And there are other young people. I want to lay the foundation so that the young people of Tuskegee will be able to carry on this work and this leadership. We can't give up on Tuskegee. Tuskegee has only just begun. We're laying the foundation for greatness and the continuation of Tuskegee. I want to, just as I cast down my bucket where I am, in the words of Booker T. Washington, I'm encouraging other young people to cast down their bucket in Tuskegee and be prepared. I've been mentoring these young people, not only through the World Conference of Mayors, which serves as a training place for future mayors and future governors and future presidents and whatever. That's what we have. We have in the World Conference of Mayors the 7 T's: trust, trade, tourism, technology transfer, Twin Cities, treasury, and training. My legacy is to train young people to become future mayors, future state representatives, future governors, future presidents, passing that legacy on. Tuskegee, that's what Booker T. Washington did. He trained people for the world. And that's why I'm so happy that we brought back, under the leadership of Dr. Kenneth Harris, the National Business League to Tuskegee. So my legacy is to challenge the young people to cast down their buckets where they are, to continue to carry Tuskegee forward, to continue to make Tuskegee, Alabama, the home of Tuskegee University, the pride of the swift-growing South.
So there you have it. You've heard it from the one and the only, the Honorable Johnny L. Ford. So congratulations and thank yous are in order for this magnificent and stalwart who has been shoulder to the grindstone for all of the years to make things better for not just this place, but the place where you are, not just physically, but in your mind mentally, that you will be able to overcome some of the hurdles that you might have before you. And so for Jesse Harris, producer and cameraman, and for all, and the Tuskegee Television Network, and all of the other entities that will be broadcasting this great legacy of documentation, I'm Jagady Colbert. And so until next time, bye-bye.